What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or for the first time if you're new, I'm Sylvan, and today I'm going to be reacting to Genshin Impact A Lantern in the Night, a Gamescom 2025 trailer of sorts. I'm very interested to see what this has in store, as Flynn's in the thumbnail, so probably has to do with him in some way. I'm curious to see if this is lore, gameplay, a bit of both. Either way, just going to get straight into this. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, consider becoming a channel member if you want to support me just that little bit extra. And let's get into this.
Thus did I foresee.
Ooh.
Waves crashing on the shore.
Interesting art style.
The night sky devoured by deathly
I love the
silence.
almost like neon coloration. Okay, and then we're to 3D. Got completely distracted by the visuals, barely processed that line. Again, need to go back to that. So the Traveler, entering Nodcry, I suppose. Ooh, are these Wild Hunt? That looks pretty Wild Hunt. Interesting. I'm loving the designs already. Interesting, they fear the light or something, or that's a special light? Ooh. Ooh. I'm already liking the music. Is this essentially a trailer for him? I was not expecting a trailer for Flynn's, like, proper trailer. Ooh. I'm gonna need to grab that shot of him with the, like, half face.
This is no place to linger on a foggy night.
Fair.
Allow me to escort you out.
Okay. And that's that. All right. Interesting. So this is very character trailer coded in just the entirety of how it's designed. It makes me curious if we'll get another trailer that is also for Flynn's, or if that will just sort of be brushed over and this is functioning as that. Because this is functionally doing all of the work that a trailer would do, just a bit preemptively. But going through it more thoroughly, we begin with this interesting art style where it's this very high contrast coloration. There's pure black contrasting with these bright pinks, and all of the colors are very stark and concrete and flat. Outside of pretty much like the moon and a little bit of how the waves are done, there is very little blending of the color going on. It's these harsh cutoffs that give very clear and distinct shapes. It almost gives the vibe of a print or something like that. But to look at what's actually being said, because I basically missed it before when I was just looking at the visuals, we open with Flynn saying, "Thus did I foresee, waves crashing on the shore, the night sky devoured by deathly silence." This could inevitably be in reference to a lot of things. Inevitably a lot of things we probably don't fully understand yet, but inevitably the moon plays a big part in everything in Nodcry, and presumably in the story of Nodcry. So the night sky and the visual of the moon here makes me think of the idea of the night sky devoured by deathly silence perhaps has to do with the idea of something happening to the moon, whether it's the Fatui, or potentially more likely in Flynn's case, because he's a light keeper, something about the abyss and the Wild Hunt consuming the moon or something. But then there's also the detail of waves crashing on the shore. That also, of course, could be tying into the moon, because the moon, the tides, that whole thing. If I'm remembering correctly, we also have from the one Nodcry trailer mention of an ancient being coming back in some form. Perhaps some abyssal creature, could be Nibelung in some form, and hence a connection to the abyss and stuff like that, because I believe devouring and consumption was some wording used in that same section of that trailer as well. So it might be all pointing to roughly the same thing on the more abyssal side of the spectrum, but it could be a lot of things, like I said. But either way, visually, outside of just the style, we have Flynn's clearly, because we can see it's a figure. There's the lantern. It obviously could be another light keeper, but we've not seen any other light keepers, so it just makes sense to be Flynn's. We have Flynn's on the shore as the waves are coming in, the moon overhead, the lighthouse illuminated by it, and then seemingly the ruins of buildings. And then we have this almost sort of flowing river almost. It's not a full river, obviously, but these trickling streams of what could be blood, abyssal energy, something else. It's not entirely clear because of the style, but nonetheless very interesting visual that I quite enjoy. And then we transition to the normal art style. We get a look at the lighthouse. It looks run down. The beams and ladder are just in utter disarray. Looks like it probably is not functioning anymore. We see some ruined walls and such. Looks like wherever this is totally in disrepair. Perhaps the Lightkeepers as an organization are less so of a actual organization and more so a couple people who are still around after the deterioration of their culture. I could see something like that, and Flynn's is just one of the last ones, still clinging to their old ways and old home, trying to fulfill their ancient duties to hold off the Wild Hunt. And then we show the Traveler moving through the area. Interestingly enough, there's gravestones, lines up with some visuals we've seen tied to Flynn before, with graves all around. Could tie into that idea that most of the Lightkeepers are dead, or most of the people that they protected are dead, if there was like a civilization around the Lightkeepers. But also could just be that the graveyards of Nod Cry are in the same area protected by the Lightkeepers, and that's just a coincidence slash aesthetic choice. But interestingly enough, we can see fairly clearly in the background here is the big Fatui structure that presumably is tied into their plans. I find it interesting how close or seemingly close it is, because either it is far more massive than we ever thought, or it is actually like bordering the Lightkeeper area, which is just interesting to my brain as I try to formulate what Nod Cry is going to look like. But then as we get this shot of presumably the Wild Hunt rising out of this purple mist, I can't help but notice that there are what look like ghosts and sort of spiritual energies and stuff past us where we were walking towards. Very much ties into that idea of the home of the Lightkeepers being a dead place. But it's also here where we get our first real proper look at the Wild Hunt and the kind of enemies that we may be facing. First off, we have the more basic ones that are sort of to the sides here that seem to be making up the majority of the enemies we see in this trailer. That seem to be as simple as just normal NPC models, but with the heads cut off, replaced with just these purple flames, and just these sort of signs of corruption along their limbs and body. Most notably being this white sort of scar-like pattern on their chests and back. That seems to perhaps be the sort of aesthetic symbol of the Wild Hunt. Though it's not the same design on all of them, it's different on all of them. It's not any kind of symbol or insignia literally, but it is a aesthetic signification of that's Wild Hunt, seeing as it's also on the big guy. But then looking at the big guy, they are much different. They still are humanoid in nature, but they are much more of a behemoth. They're wielding a weapon, a big ol' axe, but it looks like it is also some kind of corrupted abyssal manifestation rather than an actual like traditional weapon. One of its arms and hands is far more monstrous and clawed and stuff. Potentially this is just a further corruption and deterioration of one of these normal guys, because though they have a head of sorts, they do have that sort of purple flame vibe coming out of one of their eye sockets. And just looking at the outfit that is vaguely remaining on them, it's not perfectly aligned with the design aesthetic of any specific faction we've met before, but I'd say the closest one to the ones we know is probably the Fatui, which is interesting. It could just be that this was a Fatui that got corrupted or something along those lines. A lot of the Fatui that we've thought are bigger in stature, so perhaps this is just what happens when someone who actually was combatively capable or was using a delusion or whatever may be the reason. This is what happens to them if they get corrupted and transformed by the Wild Hunt, by the Abyss. But it's then as we're being accosted by the Wild Hunt that Flynn's arrives. Interestingly enough, the first thing we see of him is a blue flame that takes down one of the minor Wild Hunt members. But then his actual lantern initially looks a bit blue, and then as we reveal more of it, becomes clear it is purple. It has a purple flame within it. It makes me think, what if the flame of the lantern is actually the captured flame of a member of the Wild Hunt? It's exactly the same sort of vibe and color, so perhaps it is something along those lines. Somehow Flynn's and the Lightkeepers know how to harness and turn against the Wild Hunt its own power. And we see this in action as he raises it up, the lantern shines brightly, and all of the Wild Hunt, including the big guy, all sort of cower a little bit. And then we go into a sort of typical trailer showing off the character mechanics part of this trailer, which is very interesting to see. We are getting an early glimpse into Flynn's as a character gameplay-wise. He seems to be a polearm character. Once again, it's interesting that in gameplay, it seems like his coloration of his lantern is now blue. His general coloration is more blue. I feel like there might be something to that difference in coloration, but I don't really know what the meaning behind it would be yet. And then this shot is very interesting. It's a bit too indistinct to really tell what this visual is, but it clearly is a much more sort of monstrous side that he might be tapping into. Once again, it might be that idea that the Light Keepers have tapped into the powers of the Abyss, of the Wild Hunt, to combat it. So there might be this nature of sacrificing oneself and corrupting oneself to fight against the oncoming storm of the Abyss. That's sort of where my head is at with all this, but it could entirely be something else. But then, having disposed of the Wild Hunt in the area, he approaches us and says, "This is no place to linger on a foggy night. Allow me to escort you out." He is a guardian, he is a protector, he is a guide. But that is where the trailer ends. That is all we get. It's very interesting, very cool, gives us a lot of little teases, mainly about Flynn's and the Light Keepers and the Wild Hunt, but I appreciate it very much nonetheless. Continues to make me very eager to learn more, to see more. But I suppose unless we get any surprise trailers, we're gonna have to be waiting until the 6.0 special program. So with that, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and very special thanks to all of my channel members, including Desaize and Pokelove101 at the normal tier, and Kondo Nano at the cool person tier. Really appreciate your support, as always, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye!